My name is Megan Skellinger, and I am from Northwood, Iowa. I have a husband and 3 children, a 7-year-old and 2 6-year-olds. Yes, that's twin, and yes, they are all 3 under 7. I would say that my relationship with God currently isn't based solely on the church, but it's been this heartfelt relationship of tears and laughters and cries on a daily basis. I say that not as the church is not important, but I have found that God has found me and been with me in the darkest places. And so my relationship with him is based off of that raw individual moments that I carry on a daily basis. So my story starts off a little rough. I was born to a mother who didn't know how to be a mother. I was 2 years old and found myself in foster care because my biological mother had drunk herself into a coma. Now, because she and I were the only ones that really lived in the house, nobody really knew where I was. In my adoption paperwork, we were able to find a few things. One, that it specifically said that I should not be in a house with anybody younger than me or any animals for fear of their safety. If that gives you a kind of a window to peek through on what kind of toddler I was. And that's because I was the product of the environment I was in. Fast forward just a little bit, I get to come home with my aunt and uncle, who are believers. We moved from Iowa to Florida to go to Brownsville School of Ministry, which was in Pensacola during that time, the revival of Pensacola. This is where Jesus just kind of stepped in, like the biggest pile. We would wait in line for church for hours just to get in the door. People would camp out on the streets the night before. The auditorium held thousands of people. We had children's church was separate. I primarily was in children's church. We had Muppets, okay? There was a Muppet story, if you will, to try and make it children version. But we had a praise team. We had a prayer team. Children praying for children in need. We came from all sorts of different lives. But there was one thing that kept us together, and that was God's presence. It doesn't have a limit. It doesn't have an end. When I was 7, what I thought was going to be, I'm gonna go knock on my best friend's door and we're gonna have a good play, turned into a sexual abuse of sorts from her brother. Now, it's bad enough to say it happened once, but I'd be lying if I didn't say it happened every day for an entire year. And it wasn't just me. So on Sundays, I had this presence of God, and yet I was met with this horrible moment every single day. Almost that I could put my watch to it. When we came back in the summertime, because my dad still had his business, and I would not be around Matt. And that's when it started to click. That wasn't normal. We go back, and I'm gonna knock on my friend's door because we're back. And he answers. And I look him dead in the eye, and I say, "You won't touch me ever again. Ever again." Little did he know that his whole family was standing behind him. And a few months later, they no longer lived there. We then moved to Israel because my parents felt led to be missionaries in Israel. They were hostess of a 24-hour prayer house. On the very top level was our prayer room. Every single day, every single hour, someone was praying for Israel. Whether it was me, my mom, our friends, somebody from China, somebody from Sri Lanka, people from all over the world came there to pray. And again, I found myself in this place where it's all about praying and praying and praying and being with God. And, how could that be such a thing with everything that had just happened, right? So in Israel, I had suicide ideation, but my self-harming and substance abuse didn't really take place until we moved back to the States. And when we moved back, it was so that I could go to public school and my parents could have normal jobs and I could get an education that was higher than what they could provide. But I went from being in that state of prayer and freedom to small town, very judgmental atmosphere. I became a minority again, and I felt so lonely. I had family around, I had friends, well, I should say classmates. I was so broken. When I lived in Israel, I'm pretty sure the only way I made it was because it was solely relied on God. Like my whole world revolved around God. And I came back and I went to public school. I experienced things that were triggering. I would watch myself break down, almost like third person, because I had bottled everything up, so it always looked okay. Because I felt it was nobody's responsibility to take care of me. Because I've taken care of myself my whole life. That's my job. What's the downside to that? You break. Slowly and painfully break. We attended church throughout all of my life, and I would go to church during this time kind of empty. Putting on the facade, making sure everything was okay, doing great, going home, and dealing with my emotions the way the devil wanted me to. And there was a time where I just broke down. And that's where I decided okay, with everything that's happening, why am I still here? Nothing is changing. God, why are you not here? And when I was a kid, God said he would never leave me. So why do I feel left alone? And in those moments, I will tell you, in those moments, it was as if God was on one side and the devil was on the other. Because it was an internal and external fight for my life. I was just praying. God, please, why? I can't do this. Let this be it. But then he would say, I felt that he would say to me, I haven't left you because you're still here. You're not alone because I'm always here. And with that, I would get the strength to go a day and then a few days. And I started getting help. And the help wasn't just talking to someone. I was expressing myself, dealing with the trauma that I used to forget. And having to face that is really triggering. But life started making a turn, and I felt like I had a purpose. I was normal. I could be normal. What happened to me didn't have to continue to happen. Because that's what was happening, is that like I would relive those traumatic experiences almost daily. And that's where the emotions that I felt like I needed to process was just a circle. So then when I started dealing with those and processing them and letting them be so that God can come in and make way with my life in a direction that I never thought was possible. So when the world never stopped spinning and the devil just kept knocking, nothing I did was right at times. I was struggling to do everything. Okay, I looked like I had all my stuff together, right? I had a job, I went to school. But at the end of the night, I was barely living. I really didn't want to be alive. I had reached a moment in my life where I thought it was enough. I had dealt with enough long enough. And I decided that I didn't want to wake up the next day. My mind was just black. And it's at that moment that I realized God hasn't ever left me. I'm the one that left him. my life wasn't perfect. You could do the work. You can put all the pieces together, but you're still broken, right? You can break a vase and glue it together, but it's not going to be perfect. And I grew up in a world in my head that if you weren't perfect, you weren't good enough. And I had to learn that being imperfect is God's perfection. Because God didn't wash the blood clean. He literally put it on display so that you would realize the power in it. And today, I'm able to say, if it wasn't for Him, none of that would have been possible. Back then, my prayer life was life and death. I wasn't praying to have a relationship. I was praying to make it to the next day. I was praying so that I would be alive to have the next prayer. And, when you're just in that moment and everything is life and death, it's very dramatic. But today's life of prayer is more intimate and relationship based. It's not begging and screaming. It's smiling and thanking and seeing color in a world that used to be black and white. It's praying with my kids at the end of the day, even though they drove me completely nuts at lunch. It's taking a moment at work to bring a very traumatic experience down a level so that I can carry on the rest of my day. And that's given me this understanding that what has happened to me in the past allows me to be the person I am today. And that story is the same for each person that I see on a daily basis. God gives me an opportunity to share His light in some of the darkest situations that someone is seeing. On a daily basis, I have people who are finding out great news, and I have people who have found out debilitating and terrible news. But when they can turn around and say, I hope you have a great day, I think it says something. Because I'm there for them to have a better day. But the only goal that I ever really truly have is to show God's kindness. Because those dark places are so dark and so lonely. In the midst of it all, you feel so broken, so alone, like nobody's listening. Your tears are quiet. They taste like salt. But you know what? God doesn't care. He'll find you wherever you are, in the place where you thought nobody could see you or hear you, where nobody saw you. He'll meet you there. It's dirty, it's messy, it's gross, it's raw, and it's real. That is your moment. Everybody has a story. Yours starts with him and where he's met you and what he's done. Because he's never too far gone. You're never too far gone. He is always there. Just waiting for you to listen. Waiting for you to reach out. To make a life-changing difference. Because he loves you.